I was born into a modest family in a small town where everyone knew everyone else. Our parents were hardworking people, not wealthy, but they did everything they could to keep us safe and fed. My brother Daniel was 2 years older than me. From the very beginning, I admired him. He was sharp, ambitious, and always dreamed bigger than the rest of us. While I was content playing football in the dusty street or reading secondhand books, Daniel would talk about skyscrapers, luxury cars, and traveling the world. Growing up, we shared everything, our toys, our secrets, even the same bed when winters were too cold. Daniel always had that spark in his eyes, as if the world was too small for him. Teachers noticed it too. They praised his intelligence, his drive, and his ability to lead. I used to imagine that when he grew up, he would become the hero of our family, lifting us out of the struggle we had known all our lives. Our father worked in a factory, often coming home tired, with oil-stained hands and a weary back. Our mother sewed clothes for neighbors, staying up late into the night with a dim lamp by her side. There was never much money, but there was love. We were raised to believe that family meant everything, that no matter what happened, we could count on one another. Daniel repeated those words countless times when we were kids. But time has a cruel way of changing people. Daniel was the first in our family to go to university. He earned a scholarship and moved to the capital. I still remember the day he left. Our mother cried quietly, holding his hand as if she was letting go of a part of her own soul. Father stood proud, though I could see the trembling in his lips. As for me, I felt torn. I was happy for him, yet afraid he would forget us. The city transformed him. Letters turned into phone calls, and eventually the calls grew shorter. He stopped asking how we were, focusing instead on telling us about his new life, business opportunities, wealthy friends, expensive restaurants. I wanted to share my own stories with him, but he rarely listened. After graduation, Daniel started his own company. No one in town believed he could succeed so quickly, but within a few years, he was making more money in a month than our parents made in a year. He bought an apartment in a skyscraper, drove luxury cars, and traveled abroad. The boy who once slept beside me under a leaky roof now lived like a king. At first, I thought our lives would change too. I imagined he would help our parents retire, maybe renovate the old house, or even support me in finishing my own studies. But those dreams shattered the moment I realized Daniel had no intention of sharing his fortune. When our mother asked him once about helping to fix the roof, he laughed and said, "Why put money into that old shack? Move to the city if you want better." He didn't offer to pay for such a move. It was as if the bond we had built through years of struggle meant nothing to him. Our father grew silent whenever Daniel's name was mentioned. Mother still defended him, saying, "He is busy, he will come around." But deep down, I felt the truth. My brother had changed, and we were no longer part of his world. The first real conflict happened on our father's 60th birthday. We had planned a small gathering at home, just family, a few neighbors, and some homemade food. Our house was old, the paint peeling from the walls, and the ceiling stained from years of leaks, but there was warmth in that room, the kind of warmth money can't buy. Daniel arrived 2 hours late. He stepped out of a black car, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my father's yearly salary. His watch sparkled under the dim lights of our kitchen, and for a moment, everyone stared at him as if a celebrity had entered the room. He hugged our mother quickly, shook our father's hand, and sat down without much interest in the celebration. Throughout dinner, he spoke mostly about himself, about his new investments, his trips abroad, the people he was meeting. When our father tried to share a story from the factory, Daniel interrupted with a yawn. When I asked him if he could help me pay for a training course I wanted to attend, he changed the subject and poured himself more wine. Finally, our mother couldn't hold it in anymore. She said softly but firmly, "Daniel, your father and I are not getting younger. The house is falling apart. You have the means. Maybe you could help us a little?" Daniel's face hardened. He leaned back in his chair and said, "I worked for my money. Nobody helped me. If you want a better life, you need to fight for it yourself." The silence that followed was unbearable. My father lowered his eyes. I clenched my fists under the table. And my mother? She smiled faintly, as if trying to cover the wound his words had left. The evening ended quickly after that. Daniel left in his car, leaving behind the faint smell of expensive cologne and the heavy taste of disappointment. From that day, something broke inside me. I still loved my brother, but I began to realize he wasn't the man I thought he was. The boy who once shared bread with me was gone, replaced by someone who saw family as a burden. While Daniel's wealth grew, my life took a different path. I worked as a mechanic in a small garage, fixing cars for people who could barely afford the repairs. The pay was low, but I found satisfaction in helping others, in being useful. Still, there were nights when I lay awake, thinking about the unfairness of it all. Our parents deserved better. They had given everything for us, and now they were living in a house that shook with every storm. I tried to contribute what I could, patching the roof, buying medicine, paying bills when my father's pension wasn't enough. But my salary could never stretch far. One winter, our father fell ill. The doctor said he needed a special treatment that was too expensive for us. Mother called Daniel, explaining the situation, begging him to help. His reply still echoes in my mind. Medicine? Treatment? Dad is old. Spending money on that won't change anything. Let nature take its course. I couldn't believe it. Rage burned inside me. I told Daniel he was heartless, that he had forgotten the man who raised him, who sacrificed everything so he could study. Daniel didn't even flinch. He just said, "You don't understand business. Emotions make people weak." So I took extra shifts at the garage. I borrowed money from friends. Together, Mother and I managed to get Father the treatment he needed. Slowly, he recovered. But the scar that Daniel left on our hearts never healed. What hurt most wasn't just his refusal to help. It was the way he justified it. As if caring for family was foolish, as if love had no value compared to profit. And yet, a part of me kept hoping. Hoping that one day he would remember who he was. Hoping that the brother I grew up with was still somewhere deep inside that cold businessman. As years passed, the distance between us only widened. Daniel rarely visited home, and when he did, it felt like he was doing us a favor. He would stay no longer than an hour, leaving behind stories of his travels and photos on his phone of beaches, yachts, and skyscrapers. Our neighbors whispered about him. Some admired his success, others pitied us for being left behind. I hated those whispers, not because they were wrong, but because they reminded me of a truth I didn't want to face. My brother was rich, and yet his family lived in quiet struggle. When our mother's health began to fail, I once again reached out to Daniel. I wrote him a long letter, pouring my heart onto the page. I reminded him of our childhood, of the nights we shared bread, of the winters when we kept each other warm under a single blanket. I asked him, not as a beggar but as a brother, to help us. His reply came in a short text message. "I'm busy. I'll send flowers." Flowers. As if flowers could ease the pain of a woman who had worked her hands raw to feed him. As if flowers could replace the medicine she needed or the care she deserved. I didn't show the message to my mother. She still clung to the belief that Daniel would change, that his heart would soften. She often said, "He's under a lot of pressure, running a company, he'll come back to us." But each day proved otherwise. I tried to fill the void myself, but I could feel the weight pressing down on me. I wasn't angry about money. I was angry about abandonment. Wealth had built a wall around Daniel, a wall too high for us to climb. The breaking point came during the summer after our father passed away. The funeral was simple, held in the small-town cemetery where generations of our family lay. I stood beside my mother, holding her trembling hand as we said our final goodbye. Daniel arrived late once again, stepping out of a shining car in dark sunglasses. He barely glanced at the coffin. He hugged Mother quickly, whispered something about being sorry for her loss, and then began answering phone calls even as the priest spoke. I couldn't hold it in anymore. After the burial, when most people had left, I confronted him. "Do you even realize what just happened?" I asked, my voice shaking with rage. He raised an eyebrow. "Of course, Father died. It's sad, but life goes on." "Life goes on?" I repeated. "This man worked himself to the bone so you could study, so you could become who you are, and you can't even put your phone down for an hour?" Daniel sighed, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Listen, I can't afford to let emotions drag me down. Business is business. The world doesn't stop for anyone, not even for family." I stepped closer. "Family is not a business, Daniel. Family is what makes you human. And right now you're less human than I ever thought possible." For the first time, I saw a flicker of anger in his eyes. "Don't preach to me," he snapped. "You chose to stay in this dead-end town, fixing cars and living in poverty. That's your choice. I chose differently. Don't blame me for your failures." His words cut deep, but instead of breaking me, they lit a fire inside. "My failures?" I spat. "My only failure was believing in you, believing that the boy I once loved as a brother still existed. But he's gone, replaced by a man who measures everything in money." Daniel said nothing after that. He adjusted his sunglasses, got into his car, and drove away, leaving dust and silence behind him. Mother watched from a distance. Tears streamed down her face, but she said nothing. We both knew that Daniel was gone, not physically, but in the ways that mattered most. That night, as I lay awake, I realized something important. I had been waiting for him to come back, waiting for the brother I once knew. But perhaps it was time to stop waiting. Perhaps it was time to accept the truth, that wealth had not only changed Daniel, it had stolen him from us forever. Months passed after the funeral, and life slowly settled into a quiet rhythm. I worked long days at the garage, came home to care for Mother, and tried not to think about Daniel. But the truth is, forgetting him was impossible. Every time I passed a billboard with his company's logo, every time I heard neighbors mention his success, I felt the old wound reopen. One evening, while I was cleaning tools at the garage, a black car pulled up. I recognized it instantly. It was Daniel's driver. For a moment, my heart raced. Maybe he had finally come to talk, to apologize, to reconnect. Daniel stepped out, dressed in another expensive suit. He looked around the garage with visible disgust, as if the grease-stained floor was beneath him. "I need a favor," he said without greeting me. I almost laughed. A favor? After years of rejection and coldness, he came not to help, but to ask for help. He explained that one of his luxury cars had broken down on the way to a meeting and he needed it fixed immediately. No other mechanic was available at that hour. He wanted me to do it. For a long moment, I just stared at him. Memories flooded back. Our childhood games, his laughter, our shared secrets. And then, just as quickly, came the memories of his cruelty, his indifference, his betrayal. "You have the best mechanics in the city at your disposal," I said coldly. "Why come to me?" "Because you're here," he replied simply, as if that were enough. I fixed the car. Not for him, but for myself, because I couldn't let bitterness control me. While I worked, Daniel stood nearby, scrolling through his phone. He didn't say a word about mother, about father, about anything that mattered. When I handed him the keys, he pulled out his wallet. "How much?" he asked. I shook my head. "Nothing." He frowned. "Don't play games. How much do I owe you?" "You don't owe me money, Daniel," I said. "You owe this family years of love and care you never gave, and you can't pay that debt with cash." For the first time in years, his face softened. He looked at me, truly looked, and for a brief moment I thought I saw the boy I once knew. But then he put his sunglasses back on, muttered a quick "thanks," and drove away. I stood there in the fading light, realizing that hope, fragile as it was, still lived in me. Maybe one day he would change, maybe not, but I could no longer let his choices define me. Time has a way of teaching lessons, even the hardest ones. Mother grew weaker and I became her full-time caretaker. Daniel rarely called, and when he did, the conversations were short and hollow. She still defended him, saying, "He is busy, he loves us in his own way." I stopped arguing with her. If believing that brought her peace, then so be it. I found strength in small things, fixing a neighbor's car for free, sharing meals with friends, laughing with the children who played outside the garage. My life was far from rich in money, but it was rich in something Daniel had lost: connection. One winter evening, after Mother passed away peacefully in her sleep, I sat alone in the old house. Daniel sent flowers again, along with a brief message. "Sorry for your loss." He didn't come to the funeral. I didn't expect him to. As I sat there, surrounded by memories of laughter, struggles, and love, I finally understood. Wealth had not only changed Daniel, it had imprisoned him. He lived in a golden cage, chained by ambition and pride. He had gained the world, but lost his soul. And me? I was poor in money, yes, but rich in humanity. I had carried my parents through their final years with love, not with banknotes. I had remained true to myself, even when life was hard. I realized then that waiting for Daniel to return to us was pointless. He had chosen his path, and I had chosen mine. And though our paths had diverged, I carried no hatred in my heart, only sorrow for the brother I once knew, the boy who had shared bread with me, who had dreamed under the same leaky roof. Now when people ask about my brother, I simply say, yes, he is rich, but I am the lucky one. Because wealth is measured not in what you own, but in what you give. And in that sense, Daniel is the poorest man I know.